Hello and welcome to your second video in COMM 181, our online public speaking. In this video, we're really going to talk about how to write a speech. If you go in your lecture notes, you will see 3 steps to writing a speech. Step 1, introduction. Step 2, body of the speech. And step 3 is your conclusion. I like to think of it the same way that you would think if you were writing a paper. You would have your introduction, then you would have your body, and then you would have your conclusion. Each 3 of these have their own sections dedicated to only them. After you read it and after you've watched the video, then you will get a chance to practice and work on it. Next week, I think it's next Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you each have something to do in each of those categories. So you'll have to write an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Keep with the same topic all the way through. And do complete sentences so we get an idea. I can read it, I can look at it, I can tell you what you're lacking, what areas that you need to improve on. So let's take each of these categories, the 3 steps, and break them down. Step 1 is your introduction. In your introduction, the very first thing you have is an attention getter, AG. That AG is one of the most important parts of your speech because it grabs the audience's attention from the very beginning. So you want to make sure that you make it pop, that you make it really significant. Because at that point, the audience is going to say, yeah, we're going to listen, or no, we're not going to listen. So it could be a statistic, a quote, a story. And if you choose a story, make sure that the story is not 5 minutes long, that it's only about 2 sentences, sorry. Your whole introduction for a 3 to 5 minute speech should only be 30 to 45 seconds. For a 6 to 8 minute speech, it can be 1 to 2 minutes in length because you have longer time to set it up. So your attention getter, that's step 1 in your introduction. Something that really is going to grab our attention, make us want to listen to you the remainder of the time. The second part is your thesis. Just like when you write a paper, you have a thesis that gives the reader the overall point that you're trying to make in your paper. It's the same thing with a speech. Your thesis is going to give us, the listeners, your overall point in your speech. Think of it this way. What do you want the audience to know when you're finished speaking? Do you want them to know how they can help cause an end to homelessness? Do you want them to know the benefits of buckling your seatbelt? Do you want them to recycle by the end of your speech? What is it? Your thesis will reflect that. And then the third part is a preview statement. A preview is just that. It's a preview of your 3 main points. Now remember, when we talk about the speeches, some speeches can go like 5 to 6 minutes or 10 to 12 minutes. For the purpose of this class, we are only having 6 to 8 minutes as our longest speech. So some speeches have, 7 or 8 points. For us, we're only going to have 3. So your preview is only going to give us 1 sentence of your preview. So for instance, if we were going to do homelessness, which is the example that I've used in all of your lecture notes, I might say something like, and I'm going to stay away from words like in this speech, today, next, those very cliche words. So my preview may be something like, today we're going to learn how to cause the end of homeless, but knowing how to volunteer, where to go, and why so many people are homeless. Now that's a really weak one because I thought of it right on the spot, did not have that written down. So that's not the most powerful one, but it kind of gives you an idea of where I want you to go. After you do your introduction, you have what I call a transition sentence, TS. And that is something that leads us from point to point to point. So you will have one after your introduction. So you have your introduction, then you have your transition sentence, and then you go into the body of your speech, which is the second part of a 3-point speech. And in that body, you will have your 3 main points. So you have your transition sentence, your introduction, after your preview, your transition sentence, then you go into point number 1. And under that, you're going to have subpoints. Now, your subpoints are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and there's really no right or wrong with that. You can have, in one point, 3 subpoints. And another point, you could have 5 subpoints. And then your third point, you might only have 2. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's how many subpoints you need to make that point strong. So in your first one, you may only have 5 subpoints, and that's okay. So you'll do your first main point. You'll go into that from your transition sentence. Your transition leads us from your introduction to your first main point. Then you have your subpoints. Then you have another transition sentence from your first main point to your second main point. And then you'll have another transition sentence that leads us from your second main point to your third main point. And then you'll have another transition sentence that leads you into your conclusion. Now, all of this is written down in the lecture notes, and as I've said before, you can always email me at any point if you're confused and you don't know where to go. So, let's go back into that body. So you have your transition points in between all of your points, and you have them after your introduction and before your conclusion. So within that body, that's all the information you want to give us. If you're writing a speech, and you have a really strong point and an okay point and then a really strong point, you want to put the okay point in the middle. You don't want to put it first and you don't want to put it last. Because in the middle, if your audience is going to tune out, that's where they're going to tune out. As far as your transition sentences, you want to make them memorable as well, just like your introduction and your attention getter. Keep us going. Keep us wanting to listen. So think about language. Think about what kind of language are you going to use? How is that going to impact your listener? So after you have the body of your speech, you go into your conclusion. Now the conclusion is really like the easiest part of the speech. Once you have your introduction written, you have your conclusion. So your conclusion is your introduction in reverse. So if we go back to introduction, the last thing we did was our preview. So in our conclusion, the review is going to be the first thing, reviewing those main points. Then after that, you're going to restate your thesis. You're not going to say it word for word, but you're going to say in a roundabout kind of way. You may tie back to a few things that you said at the beginning, and then you're going to tie back to your attention getter. So if you started off with a quote, and it was like a 2-sentence quote, and you really just want to give us 1 sentence in the attention getter, then when you revisit it at the end of your conclusion, then you'd go back to that. So that's a 3-point speech. Your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. Email me if you have any questions at all, and don't forget you have those 3 parts to do, and they're all already labeled in weekly assignments. Thanks, and I'll catch you soon.